The dash is a punctuation mark that is similar to a hyphen or minus sign, but differs from both of these symbols primarily in length and function. The most common versions of the dash are the N dash and the M dash, whose names historically were loosely associated with the length of a lowercase n and uppercase m, respectively, in commonly used typefaces. Usage varies both within English and in other languages, but the usual convention in printed English text is as follows. An M dash may be used to denote a break in a sentence, to set off parenthetical statements. Glitter, felt, yarn, and buttons. His kitchen looked as if a clown had exploded. A flock of sparrows, some of them juveniles, alighted and sang. The N dash is used to indicate stanza differentiation, where it may be considered to replace and or to. The French and Indian War was fought in western Pennsylvania and along the present US-Canada border. The M dash is also used to set off the sources of "7 social sins: politics without principles, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice." Mahatma Gandhi. Common dashes. There are several forms of dash, of which the most common are. Less common of the two M dash and 3M dash, both added to Unicode with version 6.1 as U+2E3A and U+2E3B. Windows character codes require that numlock be on. Figure dash. The figure dash is so named because it is the same width as a digit, at least in fonts with digits of equal width. This is true of most fonts, not only monospaced fonts. The figure dash is used when a dash must be used within numbers. It does not indicate a range, for which the N dash is used, nor does it function as the minus sign, which also uses a separate glyph. The figure dash is often unavailable. In this case, one may use a hyphen minus instead. In Unicode, the figure dash is U+2012. HTML authors must use the numeric forms and AMP number 8210 or and AMP #X2012 to type it unless the file is in Unicode. There is no equivalent character entity. In text, the standard fonts have no figure dash. However, the digits normally all have the same width as the N dash, so an N dash can be substituted when using standard text fonts. In Xlatex one could use char 2012. N dash. The N dash, N rule, or nut, is traditionally half the width of an M dash. In modern fonts, the length of the N dash is not standardized, and the N dash is often more than half the width of the M dash. The widths of N and M dashes have also been specified as being equal to those of the uppercase letters N and M respectively, and at other times to the widths of the lowercase letters. Modes of use. Ranges of values. The N dash is commonly used to indicate a closed range of values, a range with clearly defined and finite upper and lower boundaries, roughly, signifying what might otherwise be communicated by the word through. This may include ranges such as those between dates, times, or numbers. Various style guides restrict this range indication style to only parenthetical or tabular matter, requiring to or through in running text. Examples of this usage include the preference for an N dash instead of a hyphen in ranges as a matter of style preference, not inherent orthographic correctness. Both are equally correct, and each is the preferred style in some style guides. For example, APA style uses an N dash in ranges, but AMA style uses a hyphen. Various style guides and the AMA Manual of Style recommend that when a number range might be misconstrued as subtraction, the word to should be used instead of an N dash. For example, a voltage of 50 volts to 100 volts is preferable to using a voltage of 50 to 100 V. Relatedly, in ranges that include negative numbers, 2 is used to avoid ambiguity or awkwardness. It is also considered poor style to use the en dash in place of the words to or an in phrases that follow the forms from, to, and between, and, ... relationships and connections. The en dash can also be used to contrast values, or illustrate a relationship between two things. Examples of this usage include Australia beat American Samoa 31-0, Radical Unionist Coalition, Boston-Hartford route, New York-London flight, mother-daughter relationship. The Supreme Court voted 5-4 to uphold the decision. The McCain-Feingold Bill. Among writers who use en dashes in these contexts, a distinction is often made between simple attributive compounds and other subtypes. At least one authority considers name pairs, where the paired elements carry equal weight, as in the Taft-Hartley Act, to be simple, while others consider an en dash appropriate in instances such as this to represent the parallel relationship, as in the McCain-Feingold Bill or Bose-Einstein statistics. However, there is a difference between something named for a parallel coordinate relationship between two people and something named for a single person who had a compound surname, which may be written with a hyphen or a space but not an en dash. Copy editors use dictionaries to confirm the eponymity for specific terms, given that no one can know them all offhand. The preference for an en dash instead of a hyphen in these coordinate relationship connection types of terms is a matter of style preference, not inherent orthographic correctness. Both are equally correct, and each is the preferred style in some style guides. For example, the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, the AMA Manual of Style, and Orland's medical reference works use hyphens, not en dashes, in coordinate terms, in eponyms, and so on. Attributive compounds. In English, the en dash is usually used instead of a hyphen in compound attributives in which one or both elements is itself a compound, especially when the compound element is an open compound, meaning it is not itself hyphenated. This manner of usage may include such examples as the hospital-nursing home connection, a nursing home care policy, pre-Civil War era, Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, the non-San Francisco part of the world, the post-World War II era, trans-New Guinea languages, the ex-Prime Minister, a long focal-length camera, water ice-based bedrock, the pro-conscription anti-conscription debate, public school-private school rivalries. The disambiguating value of the en dash in these patterns was illustrated by Strunk and White in The Elements of Style with the following example. When Chattanooga News and Chattanooga Free Press merged, the joint company was inaptly named Chattanooga News Free Press, which could be interpreted as meaning that the newspapers were news-free. An exception to the use of en dashes is usually made when prefixing an already hyphenated compound. An en dash is generally avoided as a distraction. In this case, examples of this include non-English speaking air traffic controllers, semi-labor-intensive industries, Proto-Indo-European language, the post-MS-DOS era, non-government-owned corporations. An en dash can be retained to avoid ambiguity, but whether any ambiguity is plausible is a judgment call. AMA style retains the en dashes in the following examples, but one could argue that some perverseness may be needed to construe the hyphen's only alternative as ambiguous. Non-self-governing, non-English language journals, non-group specific blood, non-Q wave myocardial infarction, non-brain injured subjects. Differing recommendations. As discussed above, the n- is sometimes recommended instead of a hyphen in compound adjectives where neither part of the adjective modifies the other, that is, when each modifies the noun, as in love-hate relationship. The Chicago Manual of Style, however, limits the use of the n- to two main purposes. First, use it to indicate ranges of time, money, or other amounts, or in certain other cases where it replaces the word to. Second, use it in place of a hyphen in a compound adjective when one of the elements of the adjective is an open compound, or when two or more of its elements are compounds. Open a hyphenated dot. That is, it favors hyphens in instances where some other guides suggest n-. The 16th edition explaining that Chicago's sense of the n- does not extend to between to rule out its use in U.S.-Canadian relations. In these two uses, n- normally do not have spaces around them. An exception is made when avoiding spaces may cause confusion or look odd. For example, compare the 12th of June, the 3rd of July with 12 June, 3 July. Parenthetical and other users at the sentence level. See also n- versus m-. Like m-, n- can be used instead of colons or pairs of commas that mark off a nested clause or phrase. They can also be used around parenthetical expressions, such as this one, in place of the m-, preferred by some publishers, particularly where short columns are used, since m- can look awkward at the end of a line. In these situations, n- must have a single space on each side. Itemization mark. Either the n- or the m- may be used as a bullet at the start of each item in a bulleted list. Typography. Spacing in most uses of n-, such as when used in indicating ranges, they are closed up to the joined words. It is only when n- take the role of m-, for example, in setting off parenthetical statements such as this one, that they take spaces around them. For more on the choice of m versus n in this context, see n- versus m-. Encoding, substitution, and keyboard shortcuts. When an n- is unavailable in a particular character encoding environment, as in the ASCII character set, there are some conventional substitutions, often two hyphens of the substitute. Keyboard shortcuts vary by operating system and by application. In text, the n- may normally be input as a double hyphen minus. In LaTeX you can also use the macro. On Mac OS X, most keyboard layouts map an n- to Alt+. On Microsoft Windows, an n- may be entered as Alt+0150. In Linux, it is entered by holding down Ctrl+Shift and typing U followed by its Unicode code point, 2013, or using the Compose key by pressing the Compose key, two hyphens, and a period. In Microsoft Word, the standard shortcut is Ctrl+#, but in this or any other word processing app one can also easily create custom shortcuts, such that, for example, Ctrl+- keeps the fingers near the home row. The n- is sometimes used as a substitute for the minus sign, when the minus sign character is not available, since the n- is usually the same width as a plus sign. For example, the original 8-bit Macintosh character set had an n-, useful for the minus sign. Years before Unicode with a dedicated minus sign was available, the hyphen minus is usually too narrow to make a typographically acceptable minus sign. However, the n- cannot be used for a minus sign in programming languages because the syntax usually requires a hyphen minus. M-. The M-, M rule, or mutton, is longer than an n-. The character is called an M- because it is 1 m wide, a length that varies depending on the font size. 1 m is the same length as the font's height. So in 9-point type, an M- is 9 points wide, while in 24-point type the M- is 24 points wide. By comparison, the N-, with its 1 n width, is in most fonts either a half m wide or the width of an n. Modes of use. The M- is used in several ways, primarily in places where a set of parentheses or a colon might otherwise be used. It can show an abrupt change in thought or be used where a full stop is too strong and a comma too weak. M- are also used to set off summaries or definitions. Common uses and definitions are cited below with examples. Colon-like use. Simple equivalence of colon and M-. 3 alkali metals of the usual substituents, sodium, potassium, and lithium. 3 alkali metals of the usual substituents, sodium, potassium, and lithium. Inversion of the function of a colon. These are the colors of the flag: red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue. These are the colors of the flag. Parentheses-like use. Simple equivalence of paired parenthetical marks. Compare parentheses with M-. 3 alkali metals of the usual substituents. 3 alkali metals, sodium, potassium, and lithium, are the usual substituents. Compare commas, M- and parentheses when no internal commas intervene. The food, which was delicious, reminded me of home. The food, which was delicious, reminded me of home. The food reminded me of home. Written dialogue can sometimes benefit from the first two in that the third may not suggest speech cadence to the reader as directly as the first two, but the difference is subtle and may not matter to every writer. In contrast, the third may have a subtle advantage over the first two in expository writing such as scientific writing and technical writing. Because speech cadence is irrelevant there and technical readers may appreciate the grouping and nesting of phrases and clauses that brackets allow. Again, the subtlety of this distinction makes the choice a minor one. Subtle differences in punctuation. It may indicate an interpolation stronger than that demarcated by parentheses, as in the following from Nicholson Baker's The Mezzanine. At that age I once stabbed my best friend, Fred, with a pair of pinking shears in the base of the neck. Enraged because he had been given the comprehensive 64-crayon Crayola box, including the gold and silver crayons, and would not let me look closely at the box to see how Crayola had stabilized the built-in crayon sharpener under the tiers of crayons. Interruption of a speaker. Interruption by someone else in this use. It is sometimes doubled, but I'm trying to explain that I'm aware of your mitigating circumstances but your negative attitude was excessive. In a related use, it may visually indicate the shift between speakers when they overlap in speech. For example, the M- is used this way in Joseph Heller's Catch-22. He was Cain, Ulysses, the Flying Dutchman. He was Lot in Sodom, Deirdre of the Sorrows, Sweeney in The Nightingales Among Trees. He was the miracle ingredient Z147. He was crazy. Cleavinger interrupted, shrieking, "That's what you are, crazy, immense. I'm a real, slam-bang, honest-to-goodness, three-fisted humdinger. I'm a bona fide superman." Self-interruption. Simple revision of a statement as one's thoughts evolve on the fly. I believe I shall. No, I'm going to do it. Contemplative or emotional trailing off. I sense something, a presence I've not felt since, in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Get out or else. Either an ellipsis or an M- can indicate aposiopesis, the rhetorical device by which a sentence is stopped short not because of interruption, but because the speaker is too emotional or pensive to continue. Because the ellipsis is the more common choice, an M- for this purpose purpose may be ambiguous in expository text, as many readers would assume interruption, although it may be used to indicate great emotion in dramatic monologue. Long pause. In Middle Modern English texts and afterward, dashes have been used to add long pauses. Lord Cardinal, if thou think'st on heaven's bliss, hold up thy hand, make signal of that hope. He dies, and makes no sigh. Quotation mark like use this as a quotation dash. It may be distinct from an dash in its coding. It may be used to indicate turns in a dialogue, in which case each dash starts a paragraph. It replaces other quotation marks, and was preferred by authors such as James Joyce. O saints above, Miss Douce said, sighed above her jumping rose. I wished I hadn't laughed so much. I feel all wet. Oh, Miss Douce. Miss Kennedy protested. You horrid thing. Attribution of quote source in line quotes. A penny saved is a penny earned. Benjamin Franklin. Blog quotes. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. Redaction. An dash may be used to indicate omitted letters in a word redacted to an initial a single letter at a fillet word, by leaving the start and end letters whilst replacing the middle letters with the dashes. In this use, it is sometimes double. It was alleged that D had been threatened with blackmail. Itemization mark. Either the N dash or the M dash may be used as a bullet at the start of each item in a bulleted list, but a plain hyphen is more commonly used. Typographic details, spacing and substitution. According to most American sources and some British sources, an M dash should always be set closed, meaning it should not be surrounded by spaces, but the practice in some parts of the English-speaking world, including the style recommended by the New York Times Manual of Style and Usage for Printed Newspapers and the App Style book, sets it open, separating it from its surrounding words by using spaces or hair spaces when it is being used parenthetically. The App Style book rejects the use of the open M dash to set off introductory items in lists. Some writers, finding the M dash unappealingly long, prefer to use an open set N dash. This space N dash space sequence is also the predominant style in German and French typography. On a practical note, when the M dash is set closed, it makes highlighting in ebooks difficult, as two words are often treated as conjoined. In Canada, the Canadian style, the Oxford Canadian A to Z of Grammar, Spelling and Punctuation, Guide to Canadian English Usage, Editing Canadian English Manual, and the Canadian Oxford Dictionary all specify that an M dash should be set closed when used between words, a word and numeral, or two numerals. In Australia, the Style Manual also specifies that M dashes inserted between words, a word and numeral, or two numerals, should be set closed. A section on the 2M rule also explains that the 2M can be used to mark an abrupt break in direct or reported speech, but a space is used before the 2M if a complete word is missing, while no space is used if part of a word exists before the sudden break. Two examples of this are as follows. I distinctly heard him say, "Go away a while." It was alleged that D had been threatened with blackmail. Monospaced fonts that mimic the look of a typewriter have the same width for all characters. Some of these fonts have M and N dashes that more or less fill the monospaced width they have available. For example, the sequence -N-M-minus shows as minus in a monospace font. Encoding and keyboard shortcuts. When an M dash is unavailable in a particular character encoding environment, as in the ASCII character set, it has usually been approximated as a double or triple hyphen minus. The 2-M dash proxy is perhaps more common, being a widespread convention in the typewriting era. The 3-M- proxy was popular with various publishers because the sequence of 1, 2, or 3 hyphens could then correspond to the hyphen, N- and M-, respectively. Because early comic book letterers were not aware of the typographic convention of replacing a typewritten double hyphen with an M-, the double hyphen became traditional in American comics. This practice has continued despite the development of computer lettering. In Unicode, the M- is U+2014. In HTML, one may use the numeric forms and AMP number 8212 or and AMP #X2014. There is also the HTML entity in AMP M-. In text, the M- may normally be input as a triple hyphen minus. On any Mac, most keyboard layouts map an M- to Opt plus Shift plus. On Microsoft Windows, an M- may be entered as Alt plus 0151, where the digits are typed on the numeric keypad while holding the Alt key down. In the X Windows system, it may be entered using the Compose key by pressing the Compose key and 3 hyphens. In Microsoft Word, the standard shortcut is Ctrl plus Alt plus number pad hyphen. But in this or any other word processing app, one can also easily create custom shortcuts, such that, for example, Ctrl plus Alt plus hyphen keeps the fingers near the home row. N- versus M-. The N- is wider than the hyphen but not as wide as the M-. An M width is defined as the point size of the currently used font, since the M character is not always the width of the point size. In running text, various dash conventions are employed. An M-, like so, or a spaced M-, like so, or a spaced N-, like so, can be seen in contemporary publications. Various style guides and national varieties of languages prescribe different guidance on dashes. Dashes have been cited as being treated differently in the US and the UK, with the former preferring the use of an M- with no additional spacing and the latter preferring a spaced N-. As examples of the US style, the Chicago Manual of Style and the publication Manual of the American Psychological Association recommend unspaced M-. Style guides outside the US are more variable. For example, the Canadian The Elements of Typographic Style recommends the spaced N-, like so, and argues that the length and visual magnitude of an M- belongs to the padded and corseted aesthetic of Victorian typography. Quote, in the United Kingdom, the spaced N- is the house style for certain major publishers, including the Penguin Group, the Cambridge University Press, and Routledge. However, this convention is not universal. The Oxford Guide to Style acknowledges that the spaced N- is used by other British publishers but states that the Oxford University Press, like most US publishers, uses the unspaced M-. The N-, always with spaces in running text when as discussed in this section, indicating a parenthesis, a pause, and the spaced M-, both have a certain technical advantage over the unspaced M-. Most typesetting and word processing expects word spacing to vary to support full justification. Alone among punctuation that marks pauses or logical relations in text, the not spaced M- disables this for the words it falls between. This can cause uneven spacing in the text, but can be mitigated by the use of thin spaces, hair spaces, or even zero-width spaces on the sides of the M-. This provides the appearance of a not spaced M-, but allows the words in dashes to break between lines. The spaced M- risks introducing excessive separation of words. In full justification, the adjacent spaces may be stretched, and the separation of words further exaggerated. N- may also be preferred to M- when text is set in narrow columns, such as in newspapers and similar publications. Since the N- is smaller, In such cases, its use is based purely on space considerations and is not necessarily related to other typographical concerns. On the other hand, a spaced n- may be ambiguous when it is also used for ranges, for example, in dates between geographical locations with internal spaces. Horizontal bar U+2015. Horizontal bar, also known as a quotation dash, is used to introduce quoted text. This is the standard method of printing dialogue in some languages. The em- is equally suitable if the quotation dash is unavailable or is contrary to the house style being used. There is no support in the standard text fonts, but one can use hbox, kern, 5em instead, or just use an em-. Swung U+2053. Swung resembles a lengthened tilde and is used to separate alternatives or approximates. In dictionaries, it is frequently used to stand in for the term being defined. A dictionary entry providing an example for the term henceforth might employ the swung dash as follows: henceforth, from this time forth, from now on, she will be known as Mrs. Wales. There are several similar related characters: U+007 E tilde tilde, U+02D C small tilde, U+223 C tilde operator, used in mathematics. Ends not curved as much regular tilde. In text and latex, this character can be expressed using the math mode command $sim U+301C wave dash, used in East Asian typography for a variety of purposes, including Japanese punctuation. U+FF5EFULLWIDTH tilde is a compatibility character for a wide tilde used in East Asian typography.